everybody. How are we doing out there?
こんにちはですね。
Those lights are so bright.
ちょっと光が眩しいって言ってますけども。
First of all, I'd like to say welcome and thanks for coming, everybody. And I'd like to say that I hope you learned something here today a little bit, and hope you get something. Hope this is informative to you in any way, no matter what kind of stuff you're using or what you want to use. I hope this works out. Okay. Well, what we have here is a system that is the way we work, the way we do things at Custom Audio Electronics is when we started out doing this, when I started doing this stuff 10 years ago, I went into a club and I saw this guitar player. His name was Vhd, okay? And he had this big pedal board on the ground. This was like 1980 or so. And I got up there, and I'm watching him. I'm a big fan of his and stuff. And I see there's a big tap dance going on stage. He's stepping on all of these different little pedals and things, and it sort of detracted a little bit from the music somewhat. He's always fiddling with stuff down on the ground, or bending down. Okay. So what would happen was, here he is bending over and adjusting things, and I'm thinking to myself, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a board that had all of the same type of switches on it, and maybe a system where you plug your effects into something where when you're standing up. Remember, this is before rack system equipment came out, or it was just starting to come out then. So I thought to myself, well, what if there was a switching arrangement that would allow you to be able to plug in and out different pieces of equipment depending upon your needs or what you want to use at the time, and knowing the nature of the guitar player, you're always wanting to change things, and there's always something new comes along you want to try. So I developed a switching system that had a foot controller board that is so similar, it's almost virtually identical to the same configuration that we're using today. And this was 12 years ago. So what happened was I started designing this stuff and interfacing different pieces of equipment and trying different things, and it was always, we were experimenting all the time and coming up with different ways of configuring the effects and stuff depending upon what was needed at the time. Now remember, when we first started doing this, and very continually for the next 10 years or more, it's always been the player would come to me with certain pieces of gear that he wanted to use, and whatever he wanted to use, I would interface and make happen. So as time went on, I started finding things, different pieces of gear that started working well together, and that I felt worked better than others, and came up with the certain pieces I like to. If someone comes into me and says, what do you think? What do you want? I will make recommendations to them. But first and foremost, it should be the individual player's needs. Is always, as far as I'm concerned, you can use anything you want. I'll build systems with little pedal effects just as easily as I'll build one with big rack gear pieces and stuff too. However, and also the type of system and also the style of music and stuff that is being played will dictate the type of effects and things, or amplifiers and different tonalities that you're trying to get. So what I want to stress here is very important is we're very flexible in terms of how systems get put together, whether you use preamps and power amps, or if you want to use little combo amps and effects pedals and things like that. We have developed a system, a modular system that allows you the ability to use and configure systems in different ways. And what I want to stress here is that, for instance, Joe Perry and Brad Whitford, two guys in the same band, they have two totally different types of configurations of their systems, and that are unique to each player's needs. So even though they may use the same building blocks, such as the RS-10 foot controllers, also the 4x4 audio routers, and line mixers and stuff, the systems are utilizing the same basic components, but they're configured in a different way to allow for the player's needs, depending upon what they want to do. And I'll explain how that works.
Okay.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you a very dear friend of mine who we have collaborated on different things for quite a while now in terms of systems. We work very closely, and a lot of the things that I think you see being developed these days in terms of different aspects of systems, from preamp, power amp configurations to multiple amp switching and things. We have pioneered a lot of those techniques and stuff that are very prevalent and used today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Landau.
マイケル・ランドウです。
Hello.
It's very good to be in Japan. Thank you.
And everybody's coming to the Burning Water shows tomorrow night, right? Yeah, I'll be there.
So I'm just going to play a tune called I'm Buzzed. And Bob and I have programmed 4 presets in here. And I'm just going to be switching between those 4. And then I'll play a little while and then we can talk about it.
いろんなプリセットの話とかをしたいと思います。Okay. 人だけなんで視線が熱くてちょっと緊張したって言ってますけども。
That was 4 altogether. There's basically the 4 presets I use are. I use a clean one without a lot of chorusing and harmonizer on it. It's just like. Sometimes I'll put a little delay on for a psychedelic cowboy kind of stuff. So all that is right now is just compressor and reverb and channel 1 of the amp, of the custom audio amp.
はい。最初のは今は一応クリーントーンの説明をしていただいたんですけども、一番最初にやったのが、コーラスと、イーブンタイドのハーモナイザーを聴かせてやった音です。That was for the clean tone, right?
Yeah, that was preset 1. And the other version of that is still on preset 1. I mean, still on channel 1 of the amp. But it has chorusing and harmonizer combined with delay. With delay. And that's the sound.
I'd like to take a second, actually, if I could, just to go down the line and explain to the audience exactly what's in this rack.
That would be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Okay. First of all, one of the first things that is the most important thing in this particular system is just the sound of the amplifier itself. Okay, that's the basis, is going to be the basis of your sound, is your amp sound, and then the effects are just icing on the cake. Ready? Okay, so the basis of that sound is our custom audio amplifiers 3+ SE2 preamp. This has 3 independent channels. One's voiced clean, like a Fender type clean sound. The middle channel is similar to a Marshall type, like a plexi Marshall type, old style kind of crunch sound. Then the lead sound, which we consider to be the lead sound, is a more overdriven, saturated kind of sound. And each of these channels in this preamp, you've got individual bass, middle, and treble controls, as well as gain and volume. They're all totally different, and the circuitry is different for each channel, although it's in one box. In addition to that, there is a master EQ stage that you can kick in and out over top of any of the 3 individual channels you already have called up. And what that can do for you is it can add a little oomph and presence and boost to the sound. Now what happens is, a lot of times people will use preamps. Well, go ahead. I should explain. I'll get rambling. Ready? Okay. Okay. And in conjunction with that preamp, then we use a Vhd Classic Power Amp. Now this is like over 100 watts per channel stereo power amp, and it's got it's voiced like a guitar amp power stage. Now what that means is it's similar to, say, the power amp section of a Marshall head. It's similar to that. Okay, it has a few modern features to it, of course, that give it a little more versatility, and it's a nice complement to be used with the 3+ preamp. Our preamp was designed in such a way that a lot of times there's a wide variety of different power amps that could be used, and our preamp is designed, especially with this extra EQ, to allow you to get a better, punchier kind of voicing if you use a power amp that's not designed like a guitar amp power stage. And an example of that would be power amps that you use in a PA system or something, that you could use full range, that are you could use it on your home stereo. Well, you wouldn't want to use this on your home stereo because it's voiced like a guitar amp. Okay. I'd like to say another thing, that probably on a percentage basis, what's contributing to the overall sound here is, I would have to say, 80% of this is the front end and the preamp sound. The other 20% being the voicing of the power amp used. So there's going to be a bigger difference if you're choosing between different preamps to use than there are between power amps, but they're very, the importance, it's really very important to use and match a power amp. You know, not all power amps are created equally. They're all different, and they all do have their own sounds. And that's not to say that tube is necessarily better than solid state either. That's not necessarily true. It's all, once again, your individual taste. But I've heard some solid state power amps sound just he's a tube man, most definitely. And I would agree with that. But you can, depending upon your budget, you can get a good sound out of a solid state amp if you have to. But I will just tell you this front end, this is all tube, and there's nothing in the signal path but tubes. So, ready? Okay, in between the preamp and the power amp now, you've got two things. You've got the switching system that allows you to access the various effects in the system and the functions of the system too. It doesn't necessarily have to be effects, which are controlled by the foot controller. And in addition to that, there's a line mixer in here too that mixes the effects along with the dry, unprocessed sound. There's no audio other than the volume pedal that comes out to the pedal board as well. So all of the switching and the functions are done via MIDI, and all the audio stays up in the rack. Now I must stress to you that the design of the 4x4 audio controller and the line mixer are done with the utmost sonic clarity and a minimum amount of active electronics in the signal path. So it does not impart any coloration whatsoever into the sound as well. Now the line mixer is a very important part of this whole thing as well, and what it allows you to do is mix the effects together. Okay. Well, what we've found over the years, and Mike and I have been through this so many times, and utilizing, our main goal is to try to keep the signal path very short between the preamp and the power amp. And we've come up with different techniques and configurations of applying the effects to the dry unprocessed sound. And one of the ways that we do that is with the line mixer. Now, as you can see here, you would think normally of a line mixer of having a bunch of knobs and level controls on it and pan controls. Well, all of that stuff I feel imparts a sonic degradation to the sound. So what our line mixer does is it just electronically mixes the signals and adds the signals together, and if you need to make adjustments in balance between effects, you do it at the effects themselves. That eliminates a lot of unnecessary controls and cause for confusion. Those of you who have probably seen pictures of Mike's systems and stuff in the past have probably seen, well, he's sure got a whole bunch of stuff in that rack, and what's it all in there for? Well, Mike's original system, the big rack system that you see that he uses, is utilizing many of these same effects and things. However, that system was designed many, many years ago, and we've updated it, the signal path and stuff. However, for his applications, that particular system was designed, it does not utilize any MIDI control functions or anything. There's no MIDI in that system. So that means you've got to have a dedicated effect for each type of sound you need. And depending upon where that effect is in the signal path will dictate the sound. And we'll give you an example of that in a second. Do they have the block diagram of the system in these little folders and stuff? They do. Okay. Well, as you can see in the diagrams that you've been given, certain effects are used in the signal path in a certain way. And what we like to do often enough is have some effects affect other effects, meaning a series parallel type configuration. So, for instance, the Eventide harmonizer is used in mix 1, and that is actually feeding the other two effects that are in Mix 2. In other words, the Lexicon PCM70 and the Boss SE50 are being fed signal that is harmonized and has reverb on it that we're using the SE50 for. So what happens is the effects affect each other, but your dry on-process sound remains unaffected and clear. Mike will give you an example of what we're talking about here too, in that how a chorus will be added to a harmonized type sound to give a lush, more full effect.
では実際にマイケルがちょっとデモをしてくれるそうですので。
And then we're switching to a harmonize,
Yeah.
a lower octave kind of thing. Using the harmonizer for two different sounds, the same effect, and we're switching it by MIDI.
Also, what we like to do oftentimes is dictate. You know, these days there's lots of multi-effects units that will do lots of different things at one time. Well, often I will find within a particular unit certain things that it does best. It may not do everything perfectly, but it might do some things better than others. So we'll qualify, meaning we'll decide what job that effect is going to have in the system and put it in the proper place in the signal path. For example, we like to put echoes at the end of the line, so they're generally put in Mix 2, so that they echo the sounds that come before them, so that they die off with, say for instance, if you've got a reverb on, you'd want the echo to die off with the reverb on it, not die off dry. If you have a question for me, if you don't understand what I just said, go ahead and ask me.
Could you explain about the reverb?
Okay. For instance, we like to put reverbs and chorusing and things like that before echoes. That's an example of having your echoes die off with, you know, a little chorusing or a little reverb on them. Not so much chorusing, but a little reverb. So as they die off with that chorus sound. So it's just a way of configuring the system.
Oh, I see.
So once again, this particular system represents a very you might consider a high-end, expensive equipment, which is, you know, what you're going to do is you're going to go for whatever your budget allows you to do, and hopefully, you know, if you want the best available, this represents some of the best, you know, professional gear that is available these days. Once again, if your budget doesn't require those kind of things, then I can't stress enough trying to save your money. And buy up. But once again, there's things, little, you know, pedals and stuff work great too. And as you'll see, it all depends upon the kind of sound you're trying to get. And there's nothing is necessarily better than other things, unless, you know, you got to qualify them once again. You know, some people use little pedal choruses and things like that, and they sound great. Like, you know, that's David Gilmour's way of Pink Floyd, and he gets a great sound, you know. And even Mike's other system that he uses in Burning Water utilizes pedals and stuff, and we switch old amplifiers and things like that. And it's a whole nother approach, you know. So it's one's not necessarily better than another. It's just that it's your personal preference. Now, the other thing I want to stress is that Custom Audio Japan is capable of configuring these systems in a wide variety of different ways for you. And we work very closely together via faxes and things. You know, we stay very close in touch. So, and they have all of my knowledge and all of our knowledge together. You should see the back of this thing. It's beautiful. They do great work. And the other thing...
Let's whip it around. Come on.
We will in the end. In the end. But I do want to stress you do have the capabilities that are here to getting the same quality systems that I built for the professional guys and stuff that I do in Los Angeles. It's done right here as well. And any type of configuration, depending upon what your needs are, can be met here very easily, whether you use pedals or you use different types of rack gear, whatever you choose to do, we can configure systems that will allow you to do that. One of the biggest things when I developed this thing was to allow you the capability of accessing different pieces of equipment and having preset combinations of those so that you can concentrate on the music and not be doing a big tap dance all the time. Oh, the distortion sound. You want to do a little leaf blowing there or something?
Ah, yes. This is channel 3. I would like to say also that what Bob was talking about earlier, it's very important to have your basic guitar sound as punchy as you can first. So if you're going to add effects to it, whatever kind of effects, or if you're going to add multiple effects, the best sound is always going to start from a great dry sound.
Okay.
That's with nothing on it now, just channel 3 alone. It's very Marshall-like. Channel 2? This is channel 2. This is a little more.
次はチャンネル2
More like an older Plexi Marshall type sound.
です。ちょっとヴィンテージ系のマーシャルっぽい音だと。
Here's channel 1 without
チ
any
ャンネル1です。
no effects, just straight. Maybe it's like a Fender, right? More of a Fender type sound.
フェンダーの音に非常に近づけて作った。
Like a Fender Twin or even a Super.
Teddy?
No question is Ted?
Teddy Landau of Burning Water right over there.
That's right. He's
バーニン
here.
グウォーターのベースの音です。
Bass player. Oh!
I see Miwa back there too.
Is Willie here?
Well, there's a real wide variety of different types of things you want to use and stuff, and I have certain personal preferences, because of ease of use and how they interface with other pieces too. I'm not a big fan of big multi-effect type things because half the time they can't. I like to qualify certain effects for certain things, and some work better as choruses than others, and others work better as delays and things like that. So I kind of like to break them down into specific single uses rather than using them all at once, because what happens is the flexibility is not near as good, and also where it is in the signal path is very important. So, a lot of the stuff that we like to use, we like the Lexicon equipment and stuff, and we like, I'm a big fan of the Boss SE's 70s and 50s, they work well too, but the Eventide stuff's nice, and the TC gear is nice, it's expensive, but that's the high-end stuff, but that's not to say some of the older stuff doesn't work good too, old things like old old Roland Boss Chorus CE1s and things like that. There's a new box made by Fox Rocks called a Pro Vibe, which is a univibe type sound, the old chorusing type thing, which Mike uses for burning water. So. Well, one of the best things about when there's difficulties, if the system is designed properly, and you can usually, if you know how, I can't stress this enough, is to know your system and know how things work. If you have someone else put a system together for you, try to learn as much as you can about it, so if some kind of problem does happen, you can bypass it. That's one of the things that through the years, they might be a complex system, but if you know the basic building blocks, generally you can get around a problem, unless it's a catastrophe. I would hope not, but generally they're somewhat modular in their approach, and you should be able to, bypass problem areas and find out exactly what's wrong fairly easily. I'd like to add something. Yes. Okay. Also, I'd like to add that in these types of configurations that we do, we keep the signal path very short between the preamp and the power amp, so that if there's a problem with effects or something, generally a lot of these things that are being mixed together in the mixer, if there's a problem with them, you can shut them off completely, turn power off, and you'll still get signal through the system.
And I have a guitar that I use in the studio a lot that has 2 single coils and a humbucker in the bridge, and I go between that and these. Just with our band, I use single coils only most of the time, 99% of the time. It seems to fit the music better, but I still use the others. As far as the Floyd Rose, I don't like the sound of those very much anymore, so I'm trying to get away from those. They tend to thin the sound up a little bit, and the tension is a little odd. It's a little weak.
ちょっといっぱいすぎてあれなんで、指名してくれって知ってる人で。なんでですか。Okay, wait. Michael?
Oh, you want to know if there's any funny episodes from working? I got one. Okay. This was several years ago. Okay. We were at a record release party for Kenny Loggins, and I had just met a few days before Eric Clapton, and Eric commissioned me to build a system for him. So we were all at this record release party. Eric Clapton was there, Mike was there, and I figured, okay, this is a great time. This will be great. I'll get to introduce Mike Landau to Eric Clapton. So I see Eric in the crowd, and now that he knows who I am now, because I've been seeing him the past couple of days, I go up and go, "Hey Eric, how you doing?" And he's so, "Hi, how are you?" And this, that, and the other. So I drag Mike over, and I go, "Eric Clapton, I'd like to introduce you to Mike Landau." And Mike his guitar playing was all over this record that we had just heard at this party. And when Mike gets introduced to Clapton, he falls down on his knees and starts bowing to him, and he goes, and Eric gets him up and goes, "Oh," he grabs him by the neck and goes, "You're playing stuff I should have been playing on that record." So we just started laughing. It was a funny story.
Okay, maybe it wasn't so funny.
For example, at stereo, you use combo type?
Both. I bring both. And Burning Water, we did it at my house, and it's mostly on a 50-watt Marshall, and also a Fender Vibrolux, sometimes through a 4x12, a Marshall bottom, and basically those two for the record. From the solo album, I used my rack a lot, and also Marshall's, mostly the same 50-watt Marshall. It's just a stock. It's a Plexi Marshall, and the Fender. And what was the other question?
What type of Fender do you have?
I have a bunch of them, but the one I use for recording mostly is a Vibrolux, a blackface. I think it's a early 60s Vibrolux with two 10s. It's got two 10-inch speakers and what are they, like 30 watts or something?
Yeah.
About 30 watts.
What is different that before first channel and Fender before?
Not much.
Not much.
They're very close. Not much.
I can add,
you know?
I can add to that. A lot of that too depends upon how effects might be applied to it, and it's easy. This is an easy way to have an all-in-one sound. In other words, you can process these sounds in here very easily. It's just simple to hook up. In a studio situation, doing sessions and things, it's easy to go in and have a complete sound where you're not relying on the engineers and stuff as much to help dictate your sounds, you see. Mike owns 3 completely different systems that I've put together, and the music dictates what is used for a given situation. For instance, the burning water system can select between 4 different amplifiers and then add, pedal effects to that, because that's the type of music that's the sound, the immediacy. That there's like, for instance, in that there's no echoes in this system. It's dry and punchy, and you might call it more of a vintage type of sound kind of thing, you might say. It utilizes pedals and things and those types of older style effects, you might say. So, depending upon the style of music or the job, you'll use a different tool for it. It's a different, in other words, it's a different toolbox for the job. You have a toolbox to work on your car, you don't use the same tools to work on your house. You know what I mean? It's different. So it depends upon which one you use.
Yeah, the thing about this though is that you can use it for everything if you need to, because it's so, Bob and John have finally dialed it in right, where they can get this great Fender tone and this great Marshall tone and then this great, the heavy metal modified Marshall type sound. But it's kind of psychological for me with burning water. I'd rather just sometimes plug right into amps and use just some fuzz tones and older style pedals. But this thing is, you can hear that it's the real sound. It's very close. Sometimes better.
Thank you very much.
I guess we'll try to explain that to everybody else. One of the things I'd like to stress here again is we have a real strong feeling about how we, it's all subjective, meaning, anybody's, it's one person's idea of a good sound may be different from another's, and that's fine. But we have a philosophy here at Custom Audio that we want things as simple as possible, and therefore we would much rather see a preamp like this that has 3 really great sounds than some MIDI programmable type preamp that's got 128 mediocre sounds. We like to keep it simple, and we feel that the basic fundamental sound is most important. Okay. No, I just want to stress that all of our products and stuff that we do as well are very, very simple to use. Really, it's not you shouldn't be feel afraid to use this kind of stuff. It's very simple. There's a minimum amount of controls necessary to do the job, and it does the job really well. So.
would say a lot of the tone, even though Bob has made this great system for you, a lot of the tone most of the tone comes from your hands and from your playing.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I would say just, if you can, try to use heavier gauge strings and keep your action on the higher side of things, because the guitar will ring better and it'll be punchier and it'll sustain better. And play what you like.
Okay, I'd like to say that I built a lot of systems for a lot of great players over the years. And one of the things that I've found to be true, no matter what anybody's using, you can take the exact same system and take a line of each one of these players and they can plug into the same system and everybody's going to sound different. It's all 99% of it's in your hands and your heart anyway, and you're gonna find your own voice no matter what gear you use. So just keep that in mind. That's really important too. And the other thing that I feel is really important is if you can do it, allow the professionals and stuff to put all this stuff together for you, because what it means is it allows you to concentrate more on the music and do what you do best, which is playing. You know, we have technicians that do this kind of thing, and which is, you know, what I do for a living. And it's like when my something breaks in my house, I have a carpenter come and fix it necessarily. I don't necessarily do it myself, you know. So if my stereo breaks, I usually take it to have somebody else fix it, because I'd rather be doing what I do best, and that's build systems for people, you know. So if you can, take advantage of the expertise that we have available to you, and I think you'll be a lot happier. Okay?